Welcome back to the Morning Mindset. We have been looking at Psalm chapter 23, one of the favorite psalms of the entire Bible. And it is a favorite because there is so much beautiful imagery and also so much truth that can comfort and strengthen our souls. So let's dive back in. We got through the third verse yesterday. If you haven't heard that one, please just go right back in the podcast feed and see verses 1, 2, and 3, or listen to my description of verses 1, 2, and 3, rather. And today we're going to pick up in verse number 4, where David writes, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Now, this passage is the one that's usually focused on, say, at a funeral service, where you hear this 23rd Psalm read and talked about, because it talks about this valley of the shadow of death. And that's a very pertinent thing for a funeral service, for a memorial service. Well, let's talk about it for a moment. Look at the way the phrase is written, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So even though means this thing is happening in my life, and it doesn't seem like a good thing. It seems like a scary thing, like a bad thing has happened or come into my life. And those things are a reality in our life, aren't they? I mean, as I think about it, even though that phrase basically says something bad's happened into my life, but in spite of that, I will walk through it. And he says, I will fear no evil. Now, we as human beings fear death a lot, don't we? And you may not think of yourself as fearing death, but there are practical things we do every day that show that we have a healthy fear of death. I mean, we wear warm clothing in the frigid winter so that we don't get hypothermia. Well, why is that? Well, because hypothermia is a physical threat that could lead to death. We wear seatbelts in our cars to keep us strapped in really tight so that if we are in an accident, we're not thrown about in the car. Well, why do we do that? Because those circumstances could lead to our death, right? So we do have this healthy fear of death in our culture. And he's saying, even though we walk through that valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil. You see, because even in a circumstance where death comes about for a believer in Jesus Christ, that is not an evil thing. Now, we must admit and we must understand that because of the consequences of sin that started way back in the Garden of Eden, death is a reality we must deal with. And if that sin had not entered, if evil had not stained the picture, death would not exist. Because God said to Adam and Eve, on the day you eat of the fruit that I've forbidden you to eat, you will surely die. And that means death entered into the picture. Death became a reality for Adam and Eve. And you see, this whole thing about walking through the valley of the shadow of death is an attempt on David's part to paint the most bleak picture that a human being could imagine. The things that we really do not want to happen in our lives, so that he can say, even in those circumstances, a follower of Christ, a follower of God, does not have to fear evil. And look at the reason why. He says, for you are with me. So even in death, even in the most unknown and mysterious thing that we human beings have to face, our God is with us. It says his rod and his staff, they comfort me. Now those two things that are mentioned, the rod and the staff, those are shepherd's tools. They are things the shepherd used both to discipline his sheep and to protect them from predators. And so he's saying the fact that you have those things, the fact that I know you're my shepherd and you're with me, that comforts me, even in the face of death. Do you know someone who's dealing with death right now, either approaching in their own life or someone they love who has passed on? Share this episode with them. Perhaps this will be a comfort to them. And join me again tomorrow as we continue in Psalm chapter 23.